It's a little weird because the official opening day has technically happened, though it feels like it hasn't happened yet, given that we've played some games in Korea. But now there's been a bit of a break, and we're going to get the actual opening day coming up in a little bit here.
That a whole week it will have gone by the time the season opens on Thursday the 28th. And I think all teams play on the 28th.
Yes.
And the Mets are the first team to play at 1:10. They have the only game I think I saw.
No, I think there's a couple that are
other. I thought the only one I saw was them on the top. Of course, it's going to rain here on Thursday, so
they might not actually play.
They may not play at all. So, yeah, the season has started, and already we've seen some of the impact of some of the new rules. They're not nearly as many this year, but maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
I mean, they've shrunk the pitch clock by 2 seconds with nobody on base, so now it's 18 seconds instead of 20. And this is because only 14% of the pitch clock violations occurred with runners on base in 2023. So basically, Major League is just like, okay, guys, you can't just totally ignore it when nobody's on base.
The game times rose during the season. We all talked about how the games were so much shorter than last year, and that's true.
And they were.
But they started as early as April was 2:37, and then by July it was 2:41, and in September it was 2:44. So 7 minutes more average per game as the season progressed. So Major League Baseball was looking at this going, let's try and find a way to do this. I don't know if the 2 seconds is going to make a difference, but I've heard some players say that there's so much going on in the game that the average fan doesn't think about in terms of what's running through the player's mind, in terms of the calls, that 2 seconds will mean a heck of a lot more to the player than it's going to mean to a player than it is to anybody else.
Oh, certainly, right, because they're the only ones that are actually affected by those 2 seconds.
And then they have the whole running lane thing that they changed.
Right, now they have a direct path to first base. They would have to require at least half the distance between home plate and first in the foul line. There's no more of this, like, now the dirt is good, the grass is bad.
I like that. See, if the guy's running in the dirt, he's okay. If he's not, it's not good.
And I think that's going to simplify it, though at first base was rare for it to ever really come up and be any kind of thing. I think this just will help the odd things when you have the guys hitting the ball, like the spinners down the first baseline. It's just going to be a thing for the fielder now, recognizing he's totally entitled to the base path, and you can't be annoyed if he's there.
Right. Well, and we'll talk about the obstruction rule in a moment. But the larger bases that were put in last year, I don't recall anything in particular where there were fewer injuries, or I don't really have any sense of.
I don't remember there being nearly as many guys that got
spiked,
that got hurt, jammed hands, jammed wrists.
I just don't know, though. It's anecdotal. I don't know what the
I didn't notice
were.
it much, but you know what? People seem to be pretty happy with them. And there is going to be a rule change that you saw that got called with the guys throwing down to second base with the obstruction and leaning in over the runner. You're going to see a lot of that early on from shortstops, I think, getting called as they get used to that change.
What used to be legal is not now. And a lot of the things the guys did.
And so what we're talking about is when the shortstop or the second baseman would receive the throw at second base, he would be able to lean forward when he was receiving the ball before he received the ball in order
almost
to...
like encroaching on the base area.
You can't do that anymore.
And we saw in a spring training game, Lindor got called for it, and the runner was actually safe at second base. I don't know how they scored. I guess an error on the shortstop or something like that. I have no idea. So the one thing I noticed in thinking about opening day, and we're going to have Michael Orton on our next podcast, and he wrote a book about opening day, the 50 opening days he went to, is that when I always like to look at who started the season, I look at the rosters for opening day, and what it ends up being to some degree is misleading, because if somebody's injured, you think, oh, he was the primary shortstop that year because he played an opening day.
But you actually have to look at
kind of think about
you have to look at it over a number of years so that you could see, like, wait a second, did they have this one guy that was it for a bunch of years, and then okay, wait, he missed a year. Did he stop playing for them? Okay, no, he's back the next year. He must have been hurt.
And we could probably click off just off the top of our heads a bunch of guys who we know aren't going to start the season playing, but who are scheduled to come back.
Right. Especially pitchers are very common for this. There's like Kodai Senga isn't the opening day starter for the Mets, but he would have been.
Right.
Had he not been hurt.
And probably, I don't know if Justin Verlander would have been the opening day starter, but he's not pitching for.
Exactly. Garrett Cole, I think he's
not going to be pitching opening day.
He would have been the opening day.
Nestor Cortez is going to be the Yankee opening day.
But just right there, Aaron Judge probably would have been the opening day starter for the Yankees, and now there's a chance I think he's going to miss opening day just because they might rest him while he's still getting into midseason form, apparently.
So here we are in season 5, and this is one where you get to hear us make our picks. And this year, to make it a little bit more interesting, is we're going to pick all the teams and all the divisions in the order of finish that we each predict. So you can really get to it. So
really dig into
you picked the Rockies to win the NL West. That's crazy.
That is crazy, and that did not happen.
And so one of the ways that you can look at this stuff is looking at something that's called PECOTA predictions. And PECOTA is a measure of all the players in Major League Baseball playing basically to their average capability.
It is an acronym. It stands for Player Empirical Comparison and Optimization and Test Algorithm.
But it's also named after a player.
Right. It's also a backronym. So I don't know what came first, the player's name, or they just happened to notice it worked. And
they made it fit.
They made it fit. And that was Bill PECOTA, who was a journeyman Major League player with a lifetime average of 249. And this is basically supposed to sort of represent if everybody on the team plays and it plays to their average performance, what can we expect from them? And so we'll be able to kind of compare and contrast that from what they're predicting to what we're predicting.
It is not the only measure. There are plenty of other ways you can look at this and other measures that will measure the teams. Fangraphs has their own projections, and Baseball Reference probably has their own projections. But PECOTA is pretty well regarded, and some of them this year are a little bit strange, so I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see what PECOTA predicts.
This is as of today, so these are up to date.
So where should we start? In which division shall we start? Should we finish with the NL East?
I don't care where we start.
Go ahead then.
Well, okay, let's start with what's going to be the most competitive division in baseball, and that's going to be the AL East.
Okay.
And I think the AL East, this is probably the most interesting division because these were teams that would be competing probably for the division crown in most other divisions, at least in a lot of cases.
There was a point where I had said, and I'll go out right now and say the Red Sox I have in last place in this division, but there was a point before Giolito got hurt that I thought maybe they'd even finish at 500 or slightly better.
Right.
And all the teams in that division
that
would
was
do
a real possibility.
I'm not sure I feel that way right now.
Right, and I think that it's interesting because immediately I disagree with the PECOTA standings because I'm picking the Orioles to finish first again just because I don't see why they wouldn't, unless that the idea is that last year was just a giant overperformance and maybe a standings like the PECOTA standings, especially with a really young team like the Orioles, might not know how to value them as well with a bunch of guys that has only got a year of data for, if it even has data for some of them.
I will go and say I'll pick the Yankees because it was for either the Yankees or the Orioles, but I'm less sure of my Yankee pick now that Garrett Cole is not going to start the season pitching for them, and they couldn't get Marcus Stroman didn't want to be out of turn to pitch on opening day. This is why he chose not to pitch, and Rodon is not ready to pitch on opening day. So Nestor Cortez,
and the Yankees sound like they're in mid-season form already.
It's just a little weird, but I do think the Yankees, the
Judge
lineup,
is already gimpy with a toe injury.
Yep. There's a lot of reasons why you could be nervous about the Yankees winning the division, but I look at that lineup and I just think Juan Soto's going to have a ginormous year for them.
I have to say that does make a lot of sense because the same logic that I would use for why I think the Padres will do better this season, you'd have to be able to apply to the Yankees. That a lot of things went wrong for the Yankees last year, like way more so than you would see in a normal season. So it's kind of hard to expect that they're going to have that much trouble this season. But at the same time, their lineup construction is still weird. They just have two amazing hitters instead of just one now. And the rotation, if Garrett Cole misses significant amount of time, that's a big problem for them.
I agree with that, and the Orioles, and that would be my second place team. I think the pitching is interesting there, right? Because we talked about the fact that in our prior podcast that a lot of injured pitchers on that team.
A lot of injured pitchers.
John Means is supposed to come back in short order. Kyle Bradish only doesn't have as bad an injury as they thought it might be,
but he's still going to miss some time.
He's still going to miss some time. So you're a little bit nervous right now in terms of, okay, is this all going to hold together? Because if it does, and those guys come back, that could be very good for the Orioles.
Right, that could work out really well for them. But this is also the type of season where a lot of young guys that played more last year than they ever had off a rough, they win the division, they're flying high, and then they get spiked out of the playoffs in the first round like that. That could have a weird hangover on a team, especially a young team. I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it will, but those are the reasons you have to be worried for an Orioles team. And then it's interesting.
By the way, they sent Jackson Holiday down,
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
but
he was
you know
a
what?
Rookie of the Year candidate. He still may be
Right.
Rookie of the
There's
Year.
a good chance they just bring him up a little bit later into the season, just like the Mets did with Alvarez, just somewhat manipulate service time.
And you were about to say, because those two teams...
well, I think it's just interesting because we were paying so much compliments to the AL East, but at the same time, I don't really love any of the three other teams in this division.
It's so funny you say that, because I think they're the best division in baseball, but other teams have flaws that are hard to ignore.
Right, and maybe because these teams are so well-rounded, their flaws are more pronounced than they would be in other divisions. Like, if you put these teams in other divisions, we would be more complimenting their strength because it would be more obvious.
Right.
It's just like the Jays, I'm just like, I don't love.
They have the Jays. Pacoda has the Jays in second place. That shocked me.
That's weird to me. That seems to be
winning almost 88 games.
But I wonder if that's them saying we expect Vlad Guerrero Jr. to bounce back. We expect the
Bichette to be great.
Right. We expect the pitching to bounce back a little bit.
Oh, well, here's the thing about the Blue Jays, and I think I said I've always seen them as a team of mashers. The real concern there, are they going to hit enough? Because they've got very good pitching.
Right, they've got...
certainly at the starting level.
They've got solid regular season starting pitching.
Yes, that is a good point.
That's the way I would phrase it for them.
Kikuchi,
Chris
Bassett.
Like,
right?
they've got guys in their rotation.
Manoah.
Right. I don't know how much you're counting on Manoah.
I still like that pitcher.
You can like him. It's more worrying.
Kevin Gausman is a real good pitcher.
That's what I'm saying. You've got guys that are solid that are going to give
Berrios.
you good regular season, though they're counting on Berrios to kind of bounce back because he had a terrible year.
They need
but that's what I imagine the Bacoda's looking at. But I just don't see them doing that.
Yeah, it just seems like a mismatched group sometimes.
We've been like, oh, this is the year for the Blue Jays. This is finally the year they turn the corner.
They got all the pieces.
I'm out on that.
Yeah,
it's been too many years in a row now of me being, this is the year they turn the corner, and now I'm not. And I think the only reason I don't have them in fourth is I think the magic has finally run out. Midnight has finally struck, and the carriage is turning back into a pumpkin for the Rays because they just can't do it again.
I'm with you. I'm going the same way, and I do it every year, and they always kill me. I really, really am worried. Look, their pitching is even in worse shape than the Orioles in terms of injuries. Shane Baz may come back this year. McClanahan isn't going to pitch it all this year.
There's only so many times they can somehow find some other new bullpen guy to be great.
Zach Eflin's your number one right now.
And I think, like we saw in the season, the loss of Wander Franco really hurt them. Their offense became significantly less dynamic after that. And I really think that's going to be a struggle for them just scoring runs this year.
And a hard division, right? So you got to play all those other teams all those times, and they're all good.
Right.
Even what we both probably have as the fifth place team in the Red Sox.
Right. The Red Sox on any given night can beat you because they've got a very good lineup. It's just with Giolito going down.
That pitching.
And especially with not signing Blake Snell or looking like Jordan Montgomery. They're trotting out nobody.
Brian Bayo is like, the guy that they're basically banking on for everything.
Might still be there.
Yeah, he's definitely still there. Yeah, Garrett Whitlock is there. But without Giolito, I didn't love the Giolito deal, quite frankly. So
no, but they just needed starting pitching so desperately they kind of had to make it.
So I probably am a little more pessimistic about them, even though they have what I might consider to be the best manager, one of the best managers in baseball, in Alex Cora.
I will say this though, there gets to be a point where he gets to keep that this year if
he takes his team to a 500 or better finish,
right? But,
manager of the year,
right? But at the same time, if he finishes in last place for a couple seasons in a row, it gets harder to keep being like, I think he's one of the best managers in baseball because you don't finish last in your division multiple years in a row
with those guys.
I don't think they're that bad. They're not that. Well, the problem is the rest of the division.
Yeah. So anyway, Central wise,
a much less interesting division because it's sort of a competing of who's going to be the king of Trash Mountain.
Yeah, and it's funny because the sexy...
And this is sort of both Centrals, but we're going with the AL Central.
The AL Central. The sexy pick, everybody wants, and including me, wants to find a reason to pick the Tigers.
I think it's because it's more interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not going to pick the Tigers.
No, I'm picking the Twins.
I'm picking the Twins also.
There's no reason not to.
Right, and I don't have really any reason that I can pick the Guardians to win the division. I'm trying to pick the perfect scenario for the Guardians, right? Everybody plays to the top of their, and the Guardians are projected for 81.9 wins here. That's basically a little over 500 at best.
And that's what I see them as, maybe a little over 500 team. For the Guardians to come back, one of these young outfielders suddenly has to blossom into a player we're not expecting him to. Andres Jimenez has to go back to being one of the best second basemen in baseball. Josh Naylor and Bo Naylor both have to be unbelievable again. Jose Ramirez cannot miss any time or get hurt at all. And the starting rotation can't miss any time or get hurt at all.
This is Corey from Ohio's scenario.
Right? And Emmanuel Clase has to not get hurt at all. And it's just like, okay, well, wait a second. Yeah, that's just tough to say.
Dreams are wonderful, aren't they?
Right. And I think that's the problem for them. And the Royals, they spent a bunch of money, but I think that's so that they can maybe finish third at best instead of last.
Yeah. So I would pick the Tigers, and they're projected for 75 wins, and I think that's about right.
The Tigers?
Yeah.
I put them second. I think the trading of Eduardo Rodriguez was a weird move.
Yeah. A bad move.
Right. I just don't
I didn't trade him. I didn't. Was he would trade? Yeah, he was traded, right? He wasn't a free agent.
I didn't get that because, like, you were a team that was on the up and up, and he was one of your good young pitchers. So why move on from him unless he was gonna walk next season or something? And you figured, okay, he wasn't gonna fit our timeline. We might as well get something for him.
And Tarek Skubal is the guy that they really have all their they're banking on to
That's
be
a name.
The starting pitcher for them to be the number one. Casey Mize, another one of those. This is the year for Casey Mize, to do that. I like the team. I think they've come a long way, but they haven't come that far.
No, they have not
at this point. But I will say this, and so is that the Guardians. I said, there's a scenario here where it all goes horribly wrong for the Guardians. Sorry, Corey, and that is that a selling situation that they end up even trading Ramirez before the end of the season.
But you could say that you could kind of create that fantasy for any team, basically.
I think for them though, it's so like it's so tenuous, right? Their starting pitchers are good, but they've got a lot of guys that people talk about trading. The health of those guys is in question. If they don't get off to a really good start and they're not really in it, I don't know what you're thinking about that franchise, but where it's going to go. And you can't tell Jose Ramirez, yeah, I'm sorry, we're going to trade all the guys away and we're going to be lousy for a couple of years.
I think you just don't trade the guys away.
Yeah, well, and that's what they're hoping they played well enough that they don't have to sell early. But I could see that happening there for some reason. I don't know why. The White Sox,
once they traded away Dylan Cease, that kind of tells you what they think about this team.
We thought they were a last place team before that.
Well, no, but now that they've gotten rid of Dylan Cease, it tells you they're going to tear this down and go into a rebuild. That whatever the mojo that they had for that one season just.
Well, so why aren't they? And it's a weird way to do it, right? So they wait till now to trade Dylan Cease because hopefully they got the best deal they were going to get for him. And then you've got Luis Robert there, who is their bona fide star,
right? But you have to have somebody the fans,
right? Eloy Jimenez, are you going to trade him during the season? Are you going to? I got to believe they're going to move a bunch of guys there. That
I think you're gonna get rid of the guys. You're gonna sell off. You're gonna go into a rebuild because you're gonna
rebuild your minor league system,
right? And go, okay, this is fine for us to start now because the other teams have already been doing theirs. So we'll just be behind them. And when there's, if one or two of theirs don't work out, we'll be poised to then sweep in and kind of come in and try and reclaim the division in 3 or 4 years.
And I think, Tim Anderson, who I think is in a great place now being in Miami from moving to Chicago, I think it was time for him to go there. And I think that both sides will benefit mutually from him not being in Chicago with the White Sox anymore.
Right. I think the best thing for Tim Anderson will be to just play good baseball this year.
Yeah. Absolutely. And how about the West? I mean, that's where the champions are from.
And that's who I have winning the division. I just feel that they didn't get any worse in the offseason. They kept pretty much everybody. Their young guys got a year of experience. The only thing that you could say you're really worried about is maybe the starting pitching was a little overworked.
Well, you lost Montgomery.
Right, you lost Montgomery. But I think that's a team that could very easily make a deal at the deadline to bring in another.
Well, they already brought in Michael Lorenzen just the other day. So
I don't think...
I think in the short term it's okay because you don't have Scherzer and you don't have
You need
DeGrom,
a starter pitching.
And
you
those
need
guys
starting
aren't
pitching.
going to pitch until July. So, in the Rangers scenario, where it works
I can't count on those two guys, though. I'm still thinking I might bring in yet another
At
guy.
all? You're not counting on anything from them? I don't know if I feel that way. I think that if I'm Texas, I just want to play solid ball and let those guys come back, mid-season and be healthy. And now I'm feeling pretty good.
I just don't love relying on the idea that I'm definitely going to get a solid half season from both of those guys that's injury-free.
Oh, well, they already have been injured, so I don't know. They couldn't be injury-free if they even tried.
Right. I'm just saying, at this point with both of them pitching half a season without getting injured is hard to see.
Well, I think that obviously we know they can hit, and they're a team of mashers, and maybe you won't get the year out of Adolis Garcia that you got last year because that was a pretty tremendous year.
Right, but
year.
you might, you're going to have a full season of Evan Carter, a season where Josh Young isn't playing with a broken thumb for half of it, another season of Jonah Heim.
Right.
Corey Seager still Corey Seager, Marcus Simeon still Marcus Simeon. The lineup's going to be there. And I think that the other teams in the division, the Astros, I think, are just a little old now for me. And I'm just worried about their starting pitching especially. And the Mariners just don't quite hit enough for me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I am going to pick Texas, but just barely over Houston.
It's going to be, I think, another really dogfight 3-team race like it was last year.
Now, how about the PECOTA projections? How about this, right, for the AL West? Houston, first place, 95.5 wins. Texas, 86 wins. They've got the Astros blowing out Texas.
And that just feels so strange to me. I don't know what they're valuing with the Astros that I'm not.
And while you're saying the Astros, you're expecting some degradation due to age of some of these players. And the PECOTA projections would not suggest that. If you're looking at that, they're going to be very good. And maybe Texas not having those pitchers come in until later in the season is impacting
really hurting them.
The win projection. And by the way, even if Texas were a wild card, as we saw last year, they'd be one heck of a three.
You could have two wild cards out of this division because I think that it's the Rangers 1, the Mariners 2, the Astros 3, but any one of those three teams could finish in any order, and it wouldn't surprise me too much.
Yeah, Seattle's another team where it could go well, it could go bad.
Mm-hmm. The pitching gets hurt.
Yeah. And by the way, I got confused a little bit. So they have Logan Gilbert, who's a star for them, and Logan Webb pitches for the Giants, and Logan Allen pitches for.
It's a lot of Logans.
Cleveland. Three guys named Logan that are starting pitchers in the major leagues. Like, what was going on that year or around that time? So anyway, the Astros, the Mariners pitchers, I like the starters, at the top of the rotation, but as you get down into 3, 4, and 5, and they don't hit
as good.
They don't hit.
They don't
quite
hit enough. Right? That's my thing.
The two Mitches, hopefully Haniger and Garver will give them.
They really need big seasons.
They brought in Polanco to play
right.
second base. I just don't know what to expect from that team.
Right. I guess they're basically saying we're counting on Julio Rodriguez being an MVP level player.
Well, and I think he might be, actually.
I think he might be.
Yeah. And I think he's got a chance. And you mentioned that because we're going to pick our MVPs later, and he's one that had crossed my mind, and then I forgot a little bit. Okay, is there any way that the Oakland A's are able to win more games than the Los Angeles Angels?
That's really all you're talking about with those two teams because neither one of them have a chance of competing for the division, and I don't think so on account of the A's. I think they're just going to be the worst team in baseball.
I think you're right there. Do you think Mike Trout ends the season as an Angel?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think that's up to him.
Well, I think it has been for a long time. He has said he wants to remain an Angel.
And if that's the case, he's going to remain an Angel.
That's not the same thing as Anthony Rendon, by the way. He doesn't think he wants to remain a baseball player sometimes. No. But yeah, the Angels under new manager Ron Washington had to get some fresh blood in there. I think that was smart.
Right, and hopefully, you're no longer dealing with the Ohtani situation, so maybe just that'll help relax the rest of the team, just because the media attention around the team won't be quite as insane, and you're not going to have to deal with everybody being like, wow, you're wasting the two best players in baseball. It's just going to be about you wasting Trout, and you're already kind of used to that.
So, so just doing the AL again, I have the Yankees, you have Baltimore, 1-2. We've got then...
the Twins, the Tigers, 1-2.
Well, no, the Tampa, we got to do division by division. We've got to do each place. We've got Baltimore, Tampa, and Boston, both all the same there, right? Baltimore, Tampa, Boston to finish the.
No, division. I've got. We all no, because I have the Orioles.
I'm sorry, not Baltimore, Tampa, Boston. Toronto, Tampa, Boston.
Correct.
Toronto. My mistake. Minnesota.
Minnesota, Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, Chicago.
And we have Detroit and Cleveland flopped. I have Cleveland second. And then in the West, we both have Texas and Houston, Seattle, L.A., and Oakland in that order.
Yep.
So, there's your American League. And now we come around to the National League.
And I think the National League West, obviously will go to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, they're finished. Come on. You saw the game where they
They
lost.
can't win. Yamamoto's a bust.
Yamamoto's a bum already.
They're going to win that division.
Yeah, I think so too. And Glasnow looked in the one game we saw. He looked really good, and I thought that was a smart signing. And watching the guy throw the other day, man, that's a really good signing.
They're going to be just fine. That's too good a lineup with too many good players. You're a little worried about the infield defense. You'd love for them to find a solution to not have Mookie Betts play shortstop. But you're nitpicking at that point.
Right. Right, and you've got pitchers that are coming back also in this thing that who are hurt. Dustin May will come back.
Kershaw will come back.
Kershaw will come back. So
although there's going to be a whole lot of arms,
there's reinforcements coming in.
That's going to be big for them, and I think then it's going to be interesting because. Who do you have finishing second in the NL West?
It's funny you mention that because Pacoda has the Giants finishing second at 85 wins. So the Dodgers 101, by the way. So
I don't see the Giants finishing second.
And then it's got Arizona third at just under 84 wins. And so I actually have the Diamondbacks finishing second.
I have the Padres.
Oh, wow. That's a comeback year for the Padres. That's another very puzzling team.
I just looked at last year was a year where more
everything
than any
went
other
wrong.
Team, everything went wrong for the Padres. I don't think they were like 0-11 in extra inning games. They had like the worst record in baseball in one-run games, which, those two things tend to go hand in hand. But it seemed like they were the most unclutched team in baseball. They had a really good run differential for how bad their record was, which tells me they're blowing the doors off of teams when they win and just barely losing all the time when they lose. And sometimes you just have a weird, funky year, and I expect them to get over it this year and play really well.
I think it's a cool pick. I had to pick Arizona for second, and I had the Padres third, and that's just due to the respect that I don't know how they did it last year.
Remember, that's why I didn't pick them second.
So I look at that team and thinking, man, that's a scrappy bunch. Is that? But they are clearly below the Dodgers level, as are the Padres and the Giants for that matter. And so that Pacoda's got the Dodgers projected so much higher than everybody. But that's the only thing I agree with in the projection there, not necessarily who comes.
Because I have the Giants finishing fourth behind the Diamondbacks.
Me too.
Third.
Me too. I just the Giants. I mean, they did a nice job, in bringing in Chapman and bringing in Soler and bringing in Robbie Ray was already there, but and bringing in obviously Blake Snell.
Right.
So that their projections went up quite a bit. I just feel like that's a bunch of parts that you're putting together.
It's an island of misfit toys.
Expecting them to go ahead and beat the Dodgers and or the Padres or D-backs, I don't know.
I just don't see it with them. I don't love that lineup construction. They were a team where their best offensive player last year was Wilmer Flores.
Yeah. He had the highest WAR at least. So and he won't play very much this year and at all. And that'll be a good thing for the Giants if that happens. I guess they're hoping the new Korean import is going to be.
They really need him to be
a real deal. Maybe he'll be a Rookie of the Year candidate. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess he would be.
In a year where they finished second, he is.
Yeah. The fifth place team is no surprise to anybody. Everybody kind of considers them to be
much
the
like
worst
the
team
A's,
in baseball.
It is the Rockies. They are going to finish last in this division. They will basically be unwatchable, and it is a shame because it is a lovely ballpark, but perhaps that is why it is unwatchable, because they're like one of those teams where it doesn't matter how bad you are. People are going to show up and spend money to go to the Rocky games. So
I just hate that the Rockies, again, this is the second season in a row that we're looking at that team going, I don't think they know what they want to be. Right? Okay, you guys are clearly...
They want to be a money-making enterprise.
How about winning baseball games?
I don't think that's as important.
Because the people in Colorado will show up even if you don't win.
I don't think it's about knowing what they want to be. I know what they know they are, a bad baseball team.
Well, and what we said in our when we did our division primers, we had the Rockies saying, they should just go out and get a team of mashers 1 through 9 and just get a bunch of guys that can pitch. Doesn't really matter how good they are because it's not going to work anyway.
Exactly.
So, so then you've got the Central Division, and Pacoda blew me away here as well in terms of what the projections are. So you know who they have in first place?
I couldn't believe this when I saw it.
The St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have much love for this division in general, considering the Cardinals are projected to win with 85 wins.
Well, and that might be the only thing, by the way, in terms of the amount of wins the Central Division team, has. Probably around that number. I don't think there's a 90-win team in that division necessarily, unless something goes amazingly right for one team, though, the whole season long.
And I guess they're saying that they're expecting the Cardinals to bounce back and a team like the Cubs to take a step back. I don't see why the Cardinals would bounce back. Like, what about that team? Just like their starting pitching is going to suddenly be amazing. That lineup.
Yeah, I
just don't see it.
I don't. And the Cardinals picked up, some pitchers. Sort of like what I was saying about the Rockies. Michael Wacha and Lugo.
They picked up guys that can pitch.
Guys that can pitch. And like I don't know that they let the good pitcher Jack Flaherty, who admittedly never did what they expected him to do in St. Louis.
Right, he was never what they wanted him to be.
He went to Baltimore, and they're hoping to have a resurrection of his career there. But I don't believe in the Cardinals. I think that's another mismatched team, and I have the Cubs winning that division pretty easily.
As
actually,
do I. I have them coming, finishing first, them winning.
Craig Counsell will be good for them.
Right, but I think his former team will actually be pretty close behind them. Actually,
ooh, this is going to be good because I have the Brewers finishing fourth.
Really,
I almost picked them for last.
Right, I think that's. I wouldn't be surprised, just given what they've done with their team this offseason.
Nothing.
Well, gotten rid of guys.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So yeah, I have the Cardinals.
That's more just because I don't love the other teams in this division.
Yeah, I was trying to find a way to pick Milwaukee for fifth, but there's no way I could pick the Pirates to not finish fifth in that division. Even though I think they're going to be a lot better. Although Pacoda has them projected for 71 wins in Pittsburgh. I would be really disappointed if Pittsburgh won like 71.3. Yeah, 71 games. That would really.
They are my last place team. I think the interesting thing is this a year Cincinnati finally competes for second or for a wild card spot?
I think so.
Crown. I think that they certainly want it to be.
Didn't hurt the other day. Was it Spencer Steer who came up injured, or was it McLean? I think it was McLean. Matt McLean.
Yeah.
It came up a little injured. So, they've got some concerns, injury-wise, and hoping, obviously, Jonathan India has a better season again. The young arms we've talked about before with Cincinnati, they're projected for 79 wins. I could see them winning 83, 84 games in that division, mainly at the expense of Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, frankly.
Right, yeah, I think Pittsburgh is again going to be the whipping because, the whipping boy of the division. They've got some nice players now, so I think that's why maybe some people are a little more bullish on them is because Mitch Keller's a nice starter. O'Neal Cruz has had an amazing spring, so I think there's some hope. It's just there's just not enough juice to that tank. There's just not enough guys that are really good enough players for me to really get behind that team as being able to do anything more than
O'Neal Cruz has looked sensational. O'Neal Cruz has looked sensational, and that's a player I like a lot. I shouldn't pitch an infielder, and so something like that. If he and Ke'Bryan Hayes all of a sudden have the year, and I guess I count on it more from Cruz than I do from Ke'Bryan Hayes. I think they could. I think there's a chance here in Milwaukee is really bad. That it goes horribly bad for them. Freddie Peralta's number one.
Oh, yeah.
Wade Miley's the two.
And they don't hit it all.
No Burns, no Woodruff, no offense. It could be bad. I have the Cardinals third. I don't know that they'll be a 500 team, and wouldn't that be like the first time that back-to-back below 500
Probably
years?
It was like the first time they weren't above
1,000 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So the Cardinals,
they're never bad.
They're never bad like that. So I have them third, and we'll go Brewers 4 and Pittsburgh 5. And then we come
to the AL East.
The NL East.
The NL East, I'm sorry. And this was actually a lot easier than I think for Met fans this season than it was last year. Last year...
You mean when we picked them to go to the World Series?
Oh, we were picking them to win the division.
Oh, God.
The good news is we will not be doing that this year because it's really easy to pick a division winner. It's called the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, and in fact, they're picked for 101 wins by Pacoda, which...
I would see it.
And the Philadelphia is picked for second at 84.7.
That's the surprising.
Me too. Although when I look at that Philadelphia team, it's sort of like, okay, we made it to the the NLCS last year. We won the World Series the year before we lost. Let's just run it back again. With the same guys.
But I think it's the same time. The same way I was criticizing the Astros for starting to get a little old. Don't you have to be concerned about the Phillies now?
I'm saying they're doing the same thing the Astros are doing. Let's just run it back.
And that's a team that I think is a Zach Wheeler.
You could say that about any team, but yes, you're right.
But those two, and Aaron Nola injuries away from a nightmare, because those two guys especially have been absolute workhorses for them for the past few seasons. They've missed no time. So if all of a sudden Zach Wheeler comes up hurt and misses half a season, who knows what that does to that team?
And because you've got the Nationals,
That's going to help.
And Miami in that division, you can fatten up still to a degree.
Miami is pesky. I think
Miami's overrated, frankly.
Well, but Miami's, even if they're overrated, I think they're still like a 77, 78 win team, which
projected for 79 by Picoda, so you're right.
So but if you put them in that category, they're just under 500, which means when you play them, you're not going to go 13-2 against them in the regular season. They're going to get some wins off of you. So they're not a free win like the Nationals are sort of being projected to be.
I just think to count on Miami, Yuri Perez came up a little injured. He's got a little
I'm
forearm
counting on
problem.
Miami to be pesky,
He got no Alan Contra. Okay, where's the pitching coming from there?
I'm not counting on them to be good. I'm counting on them to be annoying to play.
Yeah, annoying to play doesn't mean you're winning.
No.
So
that's why they're projected to win 79 games.
Okay, so do you have them fourth?
Yep.
And so that means you have the Mets third. Okay, and so the Mets are projected by Picoda, maybe almost shockingly, to, almost 84 wins.
Sounds about right. That's about where I'd say they're a little bit better because for them to be any better than that, I would need a pitcher to have a year that I'm not expecting him to have.
And which of those Met pitchers could do that?
Tyler McGill finally puts it together and pitches a complete season. Or
without being sent to the minors, is that what we're talking about?
Beatty figures it out and is the third baseman of the future.
Yeah, I'm more confident that the hitting of the Mets will be okay this year. They underperformed last year, too.
With the addition of J.D. Martinez, I expect the lineup to be much better. And as long as the starting rotation, it's already on its way with Senga missing time, but as long as the starting rotation literally does not all die collectively like they did last year.
There's a part of me that's thinking it could all go so wrong for the Mets starters, too. Like, Quintana comes up lame, and then Adrian Hauser is what we think he might be, which is not that
just
great.
Does his normal bat stuff.
They don't really have... And so the only thing you can say from the Met fans' perspective as you get deep in there is that the guys they have down on the farm, the Christian Scotts, the Mike Vassals,
some exciting guys.
The Blake Tidwells, they've got pitchers that they could bring up.
But they're not close to being ready.
Well, they're not close to pitching any more than maybe 60 innings in the major leagues is the problem. Right. So that's the whole thing with these young pitchers. But I would not be surprised to see any one of those guys pitch there in Queens this year for the Mets. So I have them third also, as much as I almost wanted to pick them to make it second, but because of the pitching, I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So, so we've got in the National League then, we've got the Dodgers, both as the champion.
Yep.
You've got the Padres second. I have the D-backs second.
Yep, I've got the D-backs third. You've got the Padres third.
And I got Giants fourth.
4, Rockies 5.
Correct. We've got the Cubs, both of us.
Yep.
We've both got Cincinnati in second place.
I got Milwaukee.
Okay, Cincinnati. That's a good one. I'm really going to look for that one. We can get on each other about that. I've got Cincinnati there. We've got St. Louis, I guess, in third, begrudgingly.
No, I got St. Louis in 4.
In 4. Okay. All right. I've got them in third.
Cincinnati in third.
Cincinnati in second. Excuse me. St. Louis in third. Milwaukee in fourth.
I've got because of
and then Pittsburgh last. No,
and then I think we're the exact same on the NL with Braves, Phillies, Mets, Marlins, Nationals.
I tried to come up with some way of picking the Mets again.
There's really no other way.
I couldn't do it. So anyway, we'll put the charts in on our post so you can see what our picks.
Awards?
Right? Yes, of course. So let's do that. How about the Cy Young Award winners in both leagues?
I feel like the Cy Young is really hard to predict this year, just because
nobody cares. It's hard.
Well, no. Just because I don't feel like there's not that many great starting. Like there's not a lot of there's not clear dominant aces right now in the same way that there's been the past.
Yeah, well, Garrett Cole gets hurt,
right?
So that hurts. And you could move to Corbin Burns in the American League,
but he's hurt.
And I think he's going to pitch.
I thought he was coming off.
He's fine.
Yeah. So it was Woodruff, right?
Who do you have in the American League as your Cy?
This one was really rough for me because with Garrett Cole being hurt, that was sort of my
hard to pick him, right?
That was sort of my
default pick. Yeah,
my default pick was like, okay, well at least I can go with him. But now that he's hurt, I guess I'm going to still pick Cole because I think as long as he only misses like a month, he's still the guy I think that's going to win it just because I don't think there's anybody that's even close to being as good as he is.
Well, I'm going to pick Framber Valdez, and I just expect this guy to. I think he's underperformed last year a little bit. In terms of how good he had been before that, and I think he's got a lot to prove. He's got an opportunity now with Cole being hurt and guys leaving the league or not pitching.
If he's going to win one, it's going to be this year.
Right, exactly. I think that that's a primary reason. I could have picked Pablo Lopez. That was another guy I might have picked because I think he's poised for a real good season. But
he's set up for a good year, and the competition's right for a guy like him to win.
How about the National League?
I think with the National League, even though we just talked about how if he gets hurt, it's such a bad thing for the Philadelphia Phillies, but I think it's Zach Wheeler's time to finally get one.
That's a good pick, and he hasn't had one, so I think it would be. I'm going to pick a guy who's on a contract, Max Fried of the Braves. Contract year. I think this guy has like a crazy record, like I talked about in our last, career-wise. All he does is go out there and win and lead his team, and if he can stay healthy, which has been
he's got a real shot.
His big bugaboo, he can do that. All right, how about MVP in both leagues?
I think that this is going to be a year where the addition of Ohtani is going to hurt the guys on the Dodgers, and I think Acuna gets another one.
And I'll say this: I don't think it's as big this year because he's not pitching. Mm-hmm. So because he's not pitching,
it's going to be harder.
I don't think he's the threat because I'll talk. I don't want to give a DH. I'm not.
You have to be that much more MVP. Unbelievable as a DH only to win the MVP. It's different than when he's doing that and he's pitching.
Which is why I won't pick Yordan Alvarez in the American League. But I'm going to pick Mookie Betts because he's playing shortstop, because he's just amazing, and because I still think the guy is one of the best hitters in the National League.
I think the problem for him is that with playing a full season at short, his defensive deficiencies at short are going to show out a lot more in comparison to a guy like Lindor, where he's going to have such a better offensive season than Lindor to win an MVP.
I would say I believe that he is a better overall offensive player than Lindor.
I believe that, but he's got to be so much better this season in particular because he's playing short, and people are going to be able to more be like, oh, okay, we can see the difference in how good of a fielder they are.
And it's as much for me positionally why I'm thinking, shortstops have the best chance to win MVP, right? Because if you can be a star there, and it's the most difficult position.
People are going to give it to you.
You kind of go that way. So you have Acuna, I have Betts. Who do you have in the American League?
I'm going to give it to a guy who I think that the only reason I'm giving it to him is because if his team is good, it's because he's good, and that's Aaron Judge for the New York Yankees.
Yeah. Well, I think he's the most valuable player because as he goes, the Yankees go.
Right, and if the Yankees are going to be anything this year, and I have them finishing second, I got to think it's because of Judge. I mean, granted, he's got help this year with Soto, but
that's a lot of help.
He is the engine that powers that team.
I'm going to go with Corey Seager, and just his performance, by the way, in the playoffs and all season last year. I don't know if he's underrated. I don't think it's fair to say that.
I don't think he's underrated.
No, I'm not saying I don't think he does, but I think Seager he's so excellent that we begin to lose.
It's like Lindor.
Yeah.
Like we don't appreciate just how
he does everything you want a shortstop to do,
want and more.
So he's going to be my pick. Rookie of the year was a little more difficult because
Rookie of the year I feel like it's kind of easy because you can just be like, oh, Gunnar Henderson gets it in the AL.
Yeah, you can do that, but I don't know. I'm going to pick Evan Carter. I
think that's a very safe pick.
Pick somebody different. And how about the National League?
I have no idea.
No,
none.
So who are the candidates? Who are your top rookies? I'm going to pick the Giants left-hander Kyle Harrison.
People are expecting a big year from him.
Well, and to your point, because Michael Bush is another candidate. I don't think
there's not a lot
Jackson Churio. Yeah, we heard about the big contract and all that stuff, but I don't know that he's going to earn that.
Right. I just like last year we had Corbin Carroll coming up, who everybody kind of was like he's the guy that's going to win it. I mean, you could have a guy like Jung Ho Lee on the Giants get it. This is a kind of year where he could do it because there's not a lot of guys that are already being heralded. So he's not going to have a name disadvantage as much this year unless some guy has a breakout season.
Yeah. So, and again, this is all projection because there's a guy who could be not even starting the season as is Jackson Holliday and will come up later on and win the Rookie of the Year. He isn't even playing now.
Well, I'm glad you say that because one of the things I was thinking about is the thing that I'm going to be glad to be proven wrong by baseball, because I know I will be, is the thing that I'm afraid of this season. And that it's that I'm afraid that this kind of looks like a bit of a boring regular season. It seems like we know who the good teams are. We know who the bad teams are. And we kind of seems like the season's set to play out sort of according to script. But I know that's not going to happen.
Right.
That's the best part about baseball.
Who's going to be the D-backs this year?
Right.
Who's going to be the Rangers come out of nowhere this year?
Who's going to be the team that like the Mets last year that everybody was convinced was going to be amazing and then they just fall apart? That could be the Orioles. It could be the Astros. It could be the Rangers. Like that could totally happen to somebody this season. The Phillies could be the team that falls apart. We don't know, but I'm afraid that it's going to play out by the script, even though I know it won't, and that's what makes baseball great.
And we're gonna talk about that a lot this year because we're gonna do our This Week in Baseball dropping on Mondays throughout the season.
Every week on Mondays, you're gonna be hearing about the last week.
We'll try to do that in like 30
30
minutes or less, so you don't have to do highlight shows or anything like that. You can just listen to us talk about it. We'll talk fast.
Yeah, we talk fast. You'll get what happened last week, what's probably coming up this week, some exciting stuff, and it'll be a great season.
Yeah,
I'm glad baseball's back.
Yeah, we're so glad it's back. We're so glad that you guys listen and have inspired us to keep doing this. There are times we talk about, I don't know, should we keep going? And that we get enough stuff from people
it's just fun.
Make us feel really good about what we're doing and that you guys like listening to us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it.